Hi guys, this is Mitz. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a plaque that really stands out. So stay tuned. Before we get started, I do want to say that I do a lot of 3D carvings out of just single pieces of wood, and they look great. But a lot of times when there's something like a plaque with a name or text on it, I like to do that with the two-layer process, only because I'm not a big fan of painting. My hands aren't that steady, but you know, it really makes things stand out. So what we'll do here is we'll get started with the process. We'll talk about a couple of steps. It's going to be a longer video only because we're doing the full design part of it. I'll show you a couple of real neat features in Carve Maker Plus, and then we'll cover the carving. So hope you hang with me and follow it through to the end. Thanks. All right, here are the two pieces that we're going to laminate together. I've got a piece of walnut and I've got a piece of aspen. These are going to get glued together, and then the relief is going to get carved out of the walnut, and the zero plane would be just a hair below the top, the bottom of the walnut or the surface of the aspen, so that the relief will sit proud of the aspen and give us that variation or that difference in colors. But before we glue this up together, we need to take some measurements here. So we'll measure in a few different spots on the walnut, and we'll get these all measured out. So we know that the relief can't be any taller than 0.582. I think I'm going to call that 0.582, which was the smallest dimension that I got. So we'll call that 582. The relief can't be any thicker than that. And then the aspen, we need to also caliper that and make sure that we've got the correct zero plane thickness. So we're going to call this one 748, and we'll get these glued up, let them set overnight. In the meantime, we can go and work on the design itself.
All right, we're going to go ahead and open up a new model. The material I've got is 15 by 11 1/4. We'll have the origin point in the front left corner. We'll hit OK. And the first thing that I want to do is import the rope border. So we'll go ahead and import that. There it is. And we'll hit import. Obviously this import's fairly large, so we need to make it fit our board. Our board is 11 1/4, but I'm going to cut it out. So let's go with 10 1/2 on this. And we'll hit apply. And we will hit center. That puts it directly on the center on the zero plane that you can see here. And the overall height will be 4774, which is fine because our walnut measured 0.582, so we're well within that area. So we'll go ahead and paste that down. Then we'll go in and bring in the U.S. Army logo. So we'll import another 3D model, and this time we'll do the Army symbol, and that comes in fairly large as well. I'm going to make it, let's go with 5 3/4 inch, only because I'm going to be putting some text around the outside of it. So let's zoom in. That looks fairly thin there. It's only 0.151. So I'm going to delink the Z height, and I'm going to change that to 0.3. And we'll hit apply. Now when we did that, you'll notice here that it actually dropped below the zero plane. We don't want to do that. We want it on the zero plane, so we'll change this back to 0. We'll hit apply, and now we'll paste it. Okay. So the last thing that we're going to do, I'm going to bring a head-on shot here. I'm going to bring in a vector, and we'll import a vector, and it's the U.S. Army. Okay, now we'll open that up. And there it is. It's fairly large, so I need to try and fit it inside of that rope circle. Right now it's coming in at 11.5. I want to reduce that and make sure your aspect ratio is locked. I'm going to reduce this down to, let's call it 9 inches and see what that looks like. That's fairly close. I'm going to just take that up just a little bit and make it 9 1/8. So 9.125, we'll hit apply. Okay, I like that. All right, so that's pretty much the 3D part of it. We still have these vectors out here, and what I want to really do here is highlight the vectors and spend a moment just quickly to cover a really neat feature within Carve Maker Plus, and it's the shape editor. It allows you to create a 3D from vectors. All right, let's select the vectors, and there we go. And we're going to put a start height, just a little bit of a base, just above the 0 plane, so 0.015. This will just ensure that it's into the walnut right at the joint line between the walnut and the aspen. All right, so now as you can see here, if we zoom in, it's a very thin raised part of the vector. Okay, and then we can go up here to the round, and that then puts a nice curvature to the top of that. You could make this as tall as you want. But one of the things that we need to take a look at here is the shape of the stars. Just because of the way this works, it rounds every component and it compounds through the center area. We don't really want that. We want it to look like a real star, so we're going to do a contour blend on top of that. You can see it's got a really nice curvature to it, but it's still, pointing towards the center in all directions. So once we've got that there, we'll go ahead and make sure that it's going to be an add to the 0 plane, and we will hit apply. And once we've hit apply, that should be all there. So now if we were to zoom in on the star, the text, you can see that it's all raised, and it has an appearance of, well, it is a 3D. So alright, so let's go ahead, and now the last thing that I want to do before we start in on the toolpaths, we'll cancel that window. We will just create a boundary or vector around the relief itself. So we'll hit create relief boundary, and we will go ahead and create the boundary, and it creates a boundary around everything that sits above the 0 plane. Which is another way of checking to make sure that you've got a 0 plane. But we're going to take this outside vector here and highlight that, and then we'll do an offset, and we'll offset it by 1/8 of an inch outward. All this does is it gives a little bit more room for the finishing bit to actually complete the carve downward. So we just have that created. Okay, so now let's go ahead and select that that vector, and let's start our toolpath. So I'm going to go with the 3D relief, create a machine relief toolpath, and we want to machine inside of the selected vectors, which is inside selected vectors. Our finishing tool that we're going to use is going to be the Skinny Jenny. I've got that set to 225, plunge rate of 120. If you have the Z20 slider, you can increase that anywhere upwards of 250. I think it tops out at the Z20 slider will top out at 275 is the max velocity. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then I'm going to make the change. I do have the Z20, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to make the plunge rate 200. All right, and not a whole lot of other things to do here, but let's go ahead and select our roughing. Oh, let me back up. We can switch the angle, so I'm going to change this angle to about 30 degrees so that it cuts across the grain and not with the grain, because we've got two different materials. We're carving the walnut, but we'll just be scraping across the surface of the aspen, so we want to make sure that we get as clean a cut as possible. For a roughing tool, we'll go ahead and use the 1/4 inch Jenny, and we've got that set to 160 and 80. I could run that a whole lot faster, but I'm going to stick with that for now. And we will raster this one at 45. And let's define the material. So first off, our material, we said 0.582 for the walnut and 0.748 for the aspen. So we're going to call that, we add those two up, and it's going to be 1.330. So 1.330. Okay. So at this point, I want to kind of stop here, because right now, if we were to carve it, we said that the walnut is 0.583, and if we were to carve it at that location right now, it would be well above the aspen. So this number, this bottom offset, needs to be the thickness of the aspen, or the lower material, which was 0.748. So I'm just going to type in here 0.747, just a hair under 0.747. Okay, and just so I can verify that with you, just go back to it. You'll see it's 0.747. The relief, total relief height, is this darker shade, and then any excess is above that. So when the relief gets down to the bottom of the relief, it's going to hit right at the surface of the aspen. So that will help. All of what I've done so far is applicable in Vectric. You just go to the material setup and select the same similar looking window as what we have here. Alright, so now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and calculate this. Simulate all toolpaths. It's the roughing portion, and there's the finishing portion. So that's pretty much all there is to creating a 3D. Then the last piece that we're going to do is to cut it out. So let's go ahead and delete the simulation. We'll turn our vectors back on, and we'll get a top-on view. So we want the cutout to be to this vector, and so we'll select that, and we'll do a profile cut. So our start depth is going to be 0. We want to cut all the way through the material, and we're going to use the Jenny bit, 1/4 inch Jenny. And then I'm not going to add tabs. I'm actually going to screw the board down to my table, and I'm going to have some blue tape underneath the relief itself, so it's not going to pop off. So I'll do away with the tabs or bridges, but you could always add them if you want to. So let's go ahead and calculate that, and that's done. So if we were to look at the whole simulation, it would look something like this. So you can see there that the piece is all cut out, and it will be anything in the background is going to be the aspen, everything in the foreground is going to be in walnut, and that'll make it really stand out. Alright, so the last thing we do is we save the toolpaths. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go ahead and do the roughing pass first. We'll call this the U.S. Army roughing, and we've got the right post processor, so we'll save that. We will move that over and we will do the finishing pass. So we'll change this from roughing to finishing. We'll save that. Okay, and then the last one is going to be the profile pass. And we'll call that profile. And we can save it. Okay, so now that we've got everything saved, we'll take it out to the machine and start carving on it. So there we are. We've got the piece finished off. It's been coated. I've got a keyhole slot in the back, and it's ready to ship out. Keep in mind that this process can be done with either 2D or 3D. If you're doing a 2D design where you want your design to stand proud of the different colored material, just set your depth to carve to the top of the background material, and you know, it'll carve out just the same way. It'll leave that light background, and your design or text or whatever you've got in there sitting proud would be the darker material, or vice versa. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.